This is the second half of our two-part Pro Talk interview with Carpenter Brian Campbell.
So if you have a good-sized medic bag, you can put all your PPE in there. And so if that comes in from the truck and you've got eye protection, ear protection, dust masks, gloves, knee pads, all of that gear in one bag.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast, a regular discussion with building industry professionals. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. Today I'm joined by Twin Cities carpenter Brian Campbell. You can find the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast and the original Fine Homebuilding podcast at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. So your tool system, which, is part of the things I find interesting about the way you work, but the other thing recently, I've been watching you restore an old bread truck, literally an old aluminum bread truck to be your carpenter's rig. And it has a drop-down door on the back that allows you to roll your carts right into someone's driveway or into their garage or what have you. Has the vehicle also been an evolution in your work methods?
Yes, you speak of. I spoke earlier of frustration leading to creativity, and I originally used these carts in a Dodge Ram ProMaster. Your typical work van, it's about the same size as a Sprinter, and they worked in there just fine. I had to deal with the fact that the sides of the van aren't straight, and my boxes that I build are straight, and so it took some shimming to get the French cleats on the wall of the van in a nice straight line, and be able to use the carts. But I had six of those carts in a Dodge Ram ProMaster van, and that was their first deployment. But I did not have a ramp on that van, so I would have to, take the compressor out of the cart that had the compressor in it, and load the cart off of the van onto the ground, and then put the compressor back in the cart. And then, that was a cart that had my compressor, all my nail guns, all my fasteners, all in one module. So anyway, that the old bread truck is like a cross between a truck, a van, and a trailer. It has the whole back end of that step van is a ramp that folds down. And I bought it from a lumber yard in Wisconsin that used it to deliver lawnmowers and things people purchased at the lumber yard. It was a delivery truck for them. And so since they delivered a lot of lawnmowers on wheels, they had a custom ramp fabricated for the back of that truck. Of course, when they sold it to me, it was a 43-year-old, bread truck from, 1977, and
but in fairness, it has an aluminum body, right? And it's dirt simple to work on. I think you'd agree, right?
Yeah. It's very utilitarian. It's very simple. And I bought it and worked out of it for a summer, for this last summer. And the interesting thing about those old step vans is that they're not as big as the new FedEx trucks that you see, or UPS trucks you see driving around, that are the large step vans. The step vans have gotten larger, and the old ones are very compact. Believe it or not, that 77 GMC step van that I bought is the same height, length, and width as the Dodge Ram ProMaster. So about
I would have never guessed that, Brian.
You would never guess that it's the same size as like a Sprinter, but it is.
And it's cavernous inside.
And that's because it's a big box. It's not as aerodynamic as those newer vans, but it also doesn't have a sliding door on the side. So you've got both walls completely free to use, and they're straight. And the lumberyard that I bought the truck from had already insulated the box. And, so it came kind of ready to use. However, it needed a new engine. It was leaking oil, and it had all kinds of issues. And
I would say you went all in. You made a
Yeah.
resto mod.
Well, yeah. I went all in, because ignorance is bliss, and I was given a ballpark figure. It's sort of like the old houses that I bought that were, foreclosed on by the bank, and you need everything redone. You need all new electrical. Any truck you buy that's 40 years old, all the wiring is shot. It's outlived its usefulness. So anyway, yeah, they took I found a good shop to work with, Huttner Enterprises in Dayton, Minnesota. And they took the box off the truck, and it's a complete restoration. And they put a new engine in it for me, and they sent the transmission out to a transmission shop and had it rebuilt. And it has every major component in that truck is pretty much new. They were able to rebuild the old transmission. They were able to reuse the rear end on it. They bought an old Chevy 1-ton truck, and were able to get a bunch of good parts. It was a really good, clean, old C30 truck that they bought and got a bunch of good parts off of. So it's really two old trucks put back together into one good truck. And then they rewired it entirely. And
it's a nice rig. Is it back together and on the road again?
It's completely back together. They're doing some final fine tuning on it right now. They put shore power in it, and it has an onboard charger and now 2 batteries and an inverter. So I've got 110 electrical outlets inside the truck, and it's a little maddening. It's like a old house, or it wasn't an old house. It was, you saw the pictures of that house where we were doing a new deck.
Yes.
And the ledger flashing had 2 holes per foot from putting decking in, or 4 holes per foot. So the whole back of the house was rotten and had to be rebuilt.
Yeah, it was a mess.
It was a mess, and I'm sure that house remodel was, twice what we budgeted, and so is the restoration of my truck. I got it for a really cheap price, and then I've paid dearly to have it rebuilt.
They have many hours in that project, Brian. I'm sure that was not inexpensive, because it took weeks, right?
Yeah, more than weeks. It took, better than 3 months to totally rebuild that truck. But part of that time, they're just waiting on parts,
right,
or hunting through junkyards to find old parts that fit the truck. And it's about the same price as a brand new step van,
but way cooler. It's way cooler.
Yeah, and if I got a new truck, it wouldn't be set up for shore power, or the inverter, or the outlets, or the back ramp. So I would have to spend another $20,000 on a brand new truck.
And it wouldn't be made of aluminum unless you bought an F-150.
Right. And that was the other reason that old bread truck had value. It's a Grumman aircraft aluminum body.
Yeah. And
no rust. It's beautiful. And it's funny, when I bought it, it looked like $1 million, but it needed a ton of work. So yeah, it's a little bit of a humbling experience. I did get to do some carpentry on it. This is a little bit of building science related stuff, but the body's aluminum, the frame is steel. Those are dissimilar metals. They can't come in contact with each other, especially if you mix road salt into the mix.
Right.
Or you have galvanic corrosion, and you watch your truck being eaten alive. And that old truck was probably one of the last trucks built. I don't know when they stopped doing this, but it had white oak rails on top of the frame, basically the frame rails were capped in white oak, and it was narrow strip white oak laminated together and had interesting French cleated joinery where the boards were interlocking. It was, 1970s version of isolating dissimilar metals.
I got to believe it came though from before that, right? Like probably the early aircraft industry when they were combining different materials, they figured out that this was a problem.
Right. Yep, that's true. And it was fun for me. That truck rebuild, besides telling the shop what I wanted that truck to be, a lot of that work was beyond me. I would be completely lost trying to rewire that whole truck, to be honest. So, but I could do the white oak frame rail caps. So that was a, Systems West epoxy glue up and
you had to figure out some unique joinery to connect the pieces, right?
Yeah, I did. It was, the French cleated ends of boards. I had never seen that before. So every butt joint in the original frame rail caps that they made out of white oak had these interesting little French cleated ends at the butt ends of each piece of wood, I thought that was fascinating. So I played around with that. And honestly, I figured out how they did it and cut a few of those French cleated ends on some of those narrow strip oak boards. And then after a while, I was like, I can just domino these together. I quickly figured out that, I'm going to put a few of these cool old French cleated joints in this thing. But
and then I'm going to get it done.
I'm going to cut my losses and just get the domino machine out. And so anyway, I made that lamination and put those parts together using some modern joinery along with the old
and West Systems
stuff.
Epoxy too, right?
Yeah, it's all glued together and then top coated with the Systems West epoxy, and then we sealed all the cut ends and all the bolts had, places where it was drilled out for bolts.
I had to laugh when you were asking our Facebook buddies about how to make this joinery. It was funny. One of our mutual Facebook friends said, "I know a guy, but it's you," which I found to be hilarious.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I was trying to find a way to make a 45-degree French cleat on the end of a board, and
it's too shallow,
kind of
right?
Challenging.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, there wasn't a router bit available that I could find that would do that.
I suspect the Grumman plant had a specific machine that made those cut ends that probably someone just ran through those things, by the hour.
I bet they were gang cut. They would gang cut those ends, and then they would rip them into strips. And so all those ends were already had that. All the ends already had that joint on them, so they just had to interlock them when they put the thing together. So it was interesting. That was really cool. And the white oak that went into that truck, 44 years ago, lasted for like 43 years, and it was falling apart when they took the truck apart. At the shop, they'd never seen anything like it. They took the box off that frame, and they were like, "Uh-oh." They had to call me, and they were like, "There's part of this build that you need to do. We don't know what to do with it." So that was kind of. I was glad that I had a role to play besides just arranging my boxes in the box
and writing checks.
Right. Yeah. So it's a brand new pickup trucks are running $50,000 to $90,000.
Yep.
So this is in that price range, but it's a 1-ton dually truck with a new engine and new everything. So
and it's made just for
you. I feel
you.
okay about it, but it was still kind of shocking to put that kind of money into an old truck. But
now it's a new truck. Now it's a hot rod, man.
Yeah, it seems like it.
We talk a lot about health and safety on Pro Talk. You've probably heard in past episodes. Have you had any serious injuries on the job? Have you seen any?
Yes, I mean, working for Glenn Homes in Loveland, Colorado, I watched a carpenter put his hand into a table saw blade and blood everywhere. And, he's working on a beautiful library with paneled walls. And
what did you guys do?
oh, well, we had to rush him, to the emergency room.
Tourniquet?
Yep.
Yeah, oh,
That was pretty shocking. And I've had my worst, but I've had some falls, and I've had falls off of ladders, 20 or 30 feet up, and ended up pretty bruised up. But I didn't break anything I've had two good falls from ladders. I've had the wind knocked out of me and thought I was hurt pretty bad, and then turned out to be okay. So, but it gives you pause. There are lots of ways to hurt yourself in this business, and you have to be very careful. I broke my hand in a table saw accident. It was a kickback, and I was ripping narrow strips, and I didn't have a zero clearance throat in the table saw. And one of the strips got sucked down into the blade, and the stock I was ripping the strip off of I was using a push stick because there was not much room between the blade and the fence. But that kickback hit the push stick, and the push stick broke my hand. I mean, the amount of force that can be exerted by a table saw is pretty stunning. And
so was this a cabinet saw, or was it a job site saw?
It was a job site saw. It was a little DeWalt.
So
it was a
when
little
folks
DeWalt
say
portable, and it still kicked with enough power to break my hand. And the company I was employed by at the time, I didn't have insurance with them, and I also couldn't afford to miss work, and I didn't have AFLAC, insurance. I could do work comp or whatever, but at that time, I just kept my mouth shut and worked left-handed for 6 months while my hand healed. And that's the kind of thing that happens in this business if you don't have insurance and you don't you feel like you did something stupid, and that it's your fault. And, I probably could have handled that a little differently, but I used it as an opportunity to learn how to be ambidextrous. And I actually did not tell my boss that my hand was broken.
Did you get any medical treatment at all? Did you just not go to the doctor?
Oh, no, it just broke one of the bones in my hand and one of my phalanges. And so, it's sort of one of those kind of stories where you just, tape it up and get back to work, And I finished the project I was working on, with a broken hand. And then I just did everything left-handed until the broken hand healed up. It was, I don't know, not one of my prouder moments in construction, I guess, but anyway.
What about hearing loss or aches and pains or back pain? Like, is that stuff affecting you at this point in your career?
Yeah, I have some hearing loss. I have bad shoulders, and I can't install hardwood flooring anymore. I can't swing that mallet all day, or I'm out of commission for the rest of the week. So, we start to get older and face limitations from some of the things we've done to our bodies over the years. And I have tennis elbow, and that's sort of like I sort of joke around about that it's almost like the table saw incident where you work left-handed for 6 months. And the tennis elbow, I have to not use that elbow for really weeks sometimes. And so I'm back to using the left elbow, and then that one starts to bother me. And so I have to switch back to the other one. So you do end up, if you're an old carpenter, you may end up having to become more ambidextrous, and you just favor the other side that's still working. If you can get 30 years out of this elbow, you can maybe get another 30 out of that one, right? And keep working, kind of like.
Would you tell your younger self to take care of your body better? Or do you think it's just inevitable if you spent 30 or 40 years as a carpenter, you're going to be, infirmed?
Yeah, I am at that point where hindsight is 20/20, and I am now finally good at wearing eye protection and ear protection and a dust mask or dual canister mask or whatever the occasion calls for, and using dust collection on tools. And it took me 20 or 30 years to figure out that I needed to be smart about that. And I was already starting to have some hearing loss before I got good at wearing earplugs every time I use a nail gun or a saw or anything that makes noise. And it's hard to convince younger carpenters that all of that stuff is important. And I'm a bit of a hypocrite to tell them that they should do that, because I wasn't that great at doing that stuff. Do
you think it's more meaningful when you say, when I was your age, I should have done this thing, and I know that now because I've been doing it for 30 or 40 years. Do you think that means anything?
Yeah, I do. And I think it's helpful. Well, and I don't know if I'm stealing your script, but
go for it.
that PPE kit.
Yeah, so you wrote a short piece for our tools and gear department in the magazine in issue 291 that focuses on your PPE and like convenience items that you carry with you all the time, and it's in a paramedic's bag. Right.
Yeah, and that goes back to my forestry days as a EMT and having a well-equipped medical bag with a first aid kit and other stuff in it. And I just now, a construction site first aid kit doesn't take up the whole bag. So if you have a good sized medic bag, you can put all your PPE in there. And so if that comes in from the truck and you've got eye protection, ear protection, dust masks, gloves, knee pads, all of that gear in one bag, and the first aid stuff, and other stuff like sunscreen and bug repellent, anything you need to keep yourself safe is in that bag. And I just figured out that I had to idiot proof my life and make it just stupidly simple to do those things. And if you're like I was a lot of my career, your safety glasses are on the dashboard of the truck, because the last time you wore them out there, you set them on the dash. And if you need them to make sure you're not going to send a chunk of a grinder blade into your eye when you're using a right angle grinder, and they're on the truck and you just have one cut to make, you're like, oh, I'm not going to run all the way back out to the truck to get my safety glasses. I'll just make this cut and I'll look away. But now I have, there's a pair of tinted safety glasses, a pair of amber safety glasses, a pair of clear safety glasses. They're all in the kit. And I'm wearing my reading glasses now so I can see the screen in front of me. I have safety glasses with cheaters with reading glasses built into them. And that also helps me make sure that I wear my safety glasses, because they're useful. So anyway, yeah, if you have all of that stuff at your fingertips, you'll use it, and you won't have an excuse for not using it.
So part of your Facebook feed has delighted me seeing you do things in, the varied climate of Minnesota, using a heat gun to soften ridge cap shingles so you could put them down in the middle of winter was a memorable moment. Brought back some painful memories of my own. It's always something in the upper Midwest, right? It's too hot, it's too humid, it's too cold, it's too rainy, it's too snowy, too buggy. What am I forgetting? I'm sure there's other things I'm not familiar with.
Oh yeah,
too windy.
I mean, it was too cold this morning. It was -20, and
and you tried to go to work on your own place. Your boss
yeah,
decided that didn't make a lot of financial sense.
I told my boss I'm not going to work, but then I'm home, so I thought I'll get some work done at home. And yeah, that's smart. No, my compressor wouldn't even budge. So I'm like, that'll teach you. Just go back inside. If it's too cold to go to work, it's too cold to work on your own house, you dummy. So yeah, it gets oppressively cold here at times. And even if you are stubborn enough to go out in this weather, it's pretty challenging to be productive. And even if you're getting stuff done, sometimes you're breaking tools or blowing seals on nail guns. And yeah, so they make cold weather oils for your nail guns so that we can keep working here. But sometimes I just throw my hands up. Yeah.
What about the summertime humidity? It's crazy, right? In July and August and September too, I'm sure.
It can be. The thing that's interesting about the climate here is that, I used to ride a motorcycle, and people with motorcycles that own motorcycles in Minnesota put just as many miles on their motorcycle in a year as somebody that lives in Texas. Whatever your climate is, you get out there and you enjoy it. And we enjoy the weather that's fabulous that we get here. And spring and most of summer and fall are really gorgeous. And I've taken up a lot of winter hobbies too. I'll go cross country skiing, and I like to ice skate or play hockey or do those things. And we end up working outdoors here. It might break single digits tomorrow, so we're actually planning to go outside and frame a deck tomorrow. So, that picture you were talking about, roofing, that was for Michael Anschell on a small edition, and we're roofing in February, and I'm just thinking, we didn't really plan this that well, the schedule on this. But
excepting like making you work in the middle of February up on roofs, you get to work with some pretty fantastic builders like Michael Anschell. How do you find good people to work for, the right people to work for?
Michael posted an ad in that Building Knowledge Facebook group, and I was already familiar with his work, and he was familiar with mine. So
it was a quick interview.
That was quick. Yeah. I got interviewed and hired pretty much right away. And I did get to do some fantastic projects for Michael. And it might be worth noting that kind of on an exit interview, so that was a social media thing. And I was found by Rossbot Construction via LinkedIn. And they just offered me a little better money and a little better benefits. And, obviously I need medical coverage. So anyway, on the exit interview with Michael, when we were talking over beer, he was like, I should have kept you busy by subbing you out to other builders doing finish work. And, then I wouldn't have been on that roof in February with a heat gun, So that's hindsight is 2020. And I'm thinking, that's actually, if more builders would take a little more flexible view and keep their people busy doing the stuff that they're really good at, it could be better for them and better for other people. And there's a good cabinet shop that I hope to do work for through Rossbach Construction. And I'm hoping that networking with the clients of that cabinet shop will get some other good work for Rossbach Construction, and that they won't, they'll be introduced to clients, and they don't really compete with that cabinet shop. So that'd be even less of an issue than like Michael Anschel, if he were subbing me out to other builders that are his direct competition. That's a little less obvious, but it doesn't hurt to get a little bit creative and try to do things a little differently.
I think putting the work you do up on the Building Knowledge page and your other social media outlets is a great way to, advertise what you do. And what you do, I would argue, is not what ordinary carpenters do in many cases. You need a special person.
Well, yeah, thank you. And I appreciate that. I enjoy doing really interesting creative projects.
So what about your own house, though? This is the point of the show that's my favorite. Like, what are you ignoring on your own place that you don't have the inspiration or the funds to tackle right now?
I've been trying to not bring home salvaged materials from the job site on remodel jobs.
Because it just sits around and clutters your life, maybe?
Yeah, just piles up and clutters the place. So, however, the round top French casements for that OA Michael Anschel porch project.
Yes.
I brought those windows home, the old windows home, but the jambs were shot. So I would have to build
arch top
jamb assemblies to set those old windows in. I would love to build a new back porch for this house and put those windows in it.
We should tell folks you live in what most folks would describe as a craftsman style house, which are real common in your area, right?
Yeah, it's a craftsman style home, and those windows came out of those French casement windows came out of a Tudor. I have them out at the shed in the backyard, and I dream of using them, but they're just sitting there. So we do need a back sun porch addition on this house, and I would love to build that and build new jambs for those old windows. But I also know how much work that is, and I'll probably have to be retired before I have enough time to actually tackle that project.
Do you get into the home performance stuff? I know you're interested in it, but like on your own place, does that stuff bother you? Leaky windows, leaky doors, ductwork in unconditioned spaces, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, and I have been building storm windows for this house, traditional wood frame storm windows and screens, and I built a crafts. I built this. Here's a funny story. I built a screen door that looks like the built-in behind me.
Yeah.
I've built it. It's still sitting on the front porch. I haven't put a screen on it, and I haven't hung it yet.
I'm kind of relieved to find you're like everybody
beautiful.
Else.
What?
I'm kind of relieved to find you're like everybody else.
Yeah.
You seem like such an overachiever.
Amanda's working from home at her desk, and she's laughing at me. But no, this year I built 3 storm windows. So at this rate, I'll have all the storm windows for the house, built by 2040. So.
Anything you want to ask or tell our audience before we part company?
Well, I guess I would, here, I'll grab this 40th anniversary Fine Homebuilding. And I'd read that interview of Mike Lichfield.
Yeah.
By Aaron Fagan. And he says, I became really fascinated by the process of discovering how every tool or technique is actually a response or a solution to some kind of problem. And anyway, that was the most interesting line in that article to me, because it has to do with, how carpentry is really problem solving, mm-hmm. and how all of our tools were fashioned to solve some problem, or and every technique that we do addresses some interesting situation that somebody solved. And we have this heritage. We have all these tools and all these techniques that have come down to us that were from someone else before us solving a problem. And we've been gifted with all these tools and techniques. And I've had a chance to be frustrated by problems that I wanted to solve. And like my sawhorses, I built those to try to solve some problems for myself, and have something that packed flat, and create a sawhorse that was also my miter saw stand and my table saw stand and didn't take up extra room. Anyway, when I would post pictures of my work on social media, people would almost invariably ignore my work, and they would just ask about the sawhorses, or like lately it's been the tool carts. And it's interesting to be proud of your work and have people really ignoring
not care
it. And they're interested in something else. And what they're interested in is how you solve some problems. And they may have the same problems, and you may get to help them with that. And so I've stopped avoiding that and kind of embraced it. And it's neat to have something that you built for yourself that somebody else sees as a solution to a problem they have. So that's sort of my synopsis, or my closing idea, that it's really cool if you get to do that for somebody else. So
it's been a pleasure talking to you, Brian. And there is so much to chew on for further discussion. I hope we can do this another time.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thanks for the interview, and it's kind of fun to think back on this stuff. And I enjoyed being able to, I don't know if they'll ever hear it, to drop names like Larry Mastbergen, the guy I learned so much from. So anyway, it was neat to kind of take a trip back and think about that.
Well, I hope they hear, because it's nice when someone acknowledges how important you were in their making a career, making a living, doing something that's enjoyable. And there's no bigger thing than that, I would say.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks to Brian for joining us, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your comments, questions, and suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Stay safe, everybody. Keep craft alive. Happy building, and thank you very much for listening.